Author is funded by the Pacific Northwest Writers Association, supporting writers from pen to publication since 1955. To learn more about the PNWA and their yearly conference, please go to pnwa.org. Hi, this is Bill Kenower of Author Magazine, and I'm here at Elliott Bay Book Company in Seattle, Washington with Tara Conklin, author of The House Girl. Welcome to Author.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure to be here.
Tara, we're here at the launch of your debut novel, Great Day for You.
Yeah, it's exciting.
What kind of a journey was it to your first published novel? I know you published some short stories, but...
Yeah, well, it was a very long and winding path. I used to be a lawyer. I suppose I still am, technically. I think it's one of those things you never get rid of. But I was a practicing lawyer about 6.5 years ago when I started writing the story that would become The House Girl. And it definitely did not start as me saying, I want to write a novel. It just sort of started as a story about one character. And it got longer and longer and longer over the course of a number of years until...
Did it start with Lena, or did it start
No,
with... Oh.
It actually started with Caleb Harper, who is the slave doctor, who now is the last narrative in the book, but he was where the whole thing started.
Isn't that interesting, the way things come to you?
Yeah,
The way he would introduce you to this story.
Yeah, I was reading a biography of Virginia Woolf, and I came across the term slave doctor in the book, and it just made me stop. I just started thinking about what kind of circumstances would drive a person to occupy that role, to be, someone dedicated to healing, and yet your patients are destined only for harm, more harm and graver harm. And so I started writing a story about a slave doctor, Caleb Harper, and two women appeared in the story, Dorothea Rounds, who is a young white woman working on the Underground Railroad, and Josephine Bell, who is the house slave and artist in 1850s Virginia. And these two women just kind of took possession of me, and I just really couldn't stop thinking about them, and I wanted to know more about them, and so I started writing their stories separately, each one of them.
Law school could be a surrogate MFA because so many of your brothers and sisters in the trade of law go on to write novels of one kind or another.
Yeah.
So I've asked many of them, what is your explanation? Why the link between the lawyers and the writers? Yeah,
well, I often tell people that being a litigator and being a fiction writer are really not that different. And I think a couple things. I mean, as a litigator, not really a corporate transactional attorney, but as a litigator, you do a ton of writing, and you really are building a story. I mean, your case is a story that you're building, and your protagonist is your client, and the antagonist is the other side, and you've got these pesky facts that you have to work with, but and the law that you have to get in there. But I mean, there is scope for for writing a story and building a story. And I think that's what I really loved about the law, and what drew me to it in the first place.
Was the narrative quality it had to it?
Yeah. And for the first 5 years of my career, that was mainly what I did, was research and write, and that's
what you did
fantastic.
For this book.
That's what I did for this book.
One of the interesting challenges you had is it took place in modern day New York and in America, and in the world of the law, which you're obviously very familiar with, and then of course in 1852 Virginia. So very different worlds. And one of the challenges of a writer is to make Virginia as real as New York. You can't have one stand out. So how did you address that for yourself to make both feel just as tangible?
I read a lot of letters, and when I read letters, I would write down words or phrases that were unusual, that were really of that time. And I kind of kept this, word log, I guess, that I would look at and refer to as I was writing the different sections, the different historical sections. So I think that really helped. I did make a conscious decision to sort of confine Josephine's story. I mean, it took place over the course of one day on one farm with one set of characters. I mean, she wasn't, so in that respect, it was easier than writing sort of an epic story about that time period. I mean, I felt like I knew Bell Creek, Josephine's farm, very, very well.
You can't write about slavery without writing about freedom in some way. And when you think of that word, what does it mean to you? Really, what does freedom encompass to you?
Ooh, that's a tough question.
Because that's the thing that someone wants.
Yeah,
but what is that?
I mean, Josephine in the beginning sort of describes it as these disparate desires that are very different in their specifics, but very simple. She says to wear a dress that fits her well, to love a person of her choosing. And I think it's, freedom is those little decisions that we make every day to sort of inch our way towards happiness or towards satisfaction, or however you want to describe it. And it's the ability to make those little decisions every day, I think, is what freedom is.
So this is your first novel. It caught you by surprise. You didn't even know you were going to be writing it. Once you got into it deep and you knew you were actually going to write a novel, what was the biggest surprise to you in writing it?
I guess the biggest surprise was that I could do it, that I finished it, because it is a very daunting. I think if I had sat down on day one and said, I'm going to write a novel, I think probably, I don't know, that the idea of writing a novel is just a very daunting prospect. And I think that I kind of chipped away at it bit by bit with the different stories that I was working on, the interlocked stories that kind of make up the narrative structure now of the book. I guess I was also surprised at how much I loved it and how much now I can't imagine going and doing anything else.
You loved the form of the novel.
I loved
What did you teach? If I didn't love the writing, if I said I love writing poems, little tiny, what is the great part about the form of the novel?
There's just so much scope. You can talk about so many things and follow a story. I love short stories. I love reading them, I think, more than writing them. And there's also, I think a novel is also a lot more forgiving than a short story.
It is. It's true.
A short story, every sentence, obviously in a novel, every sentence should be gold as well. But in a novel, I think it is a little bit more forgiving.
Well, you're still relatively new to this game, and yet I know you'll have an answer to this question. So what I'd like you to do is finish this sentence for me.
Okay.
If writing has taught me anything, it has taught me what?
Well, to go with your gut and to really, both on the literal level, on the level of writing, to really go with your gut when you're writing and to follow an inspiration when it comes. And just on a kind of life level, I always really loved writing and thought I would eventually be a writer. And I think, I'm glad that I didn't have to retire. I was able to retire early in terms of my legal career.